All right, questions coming now on this Monday edition of PFT PM as I talk a little bit more to buy time in search of the tweet with the Ralph Wiggum gif. All right, let's see here. PFT PM Posse, why did new Seahawks head coach Mike Macdonald get the NFL's equivalent of hazard pay, even though it's been one of the more stable and successful franchises over the last 10 years? And most importantly, it doesn't include working with someone like David Tepper. Jody Allen seems 180 degrees different. Look, there's been a lot going on the past few weeks. I'm assuming that you're right, PFT PM Posse, our good friend Bobby in Texas, that there was hazard pay, a 6-year deal. Part of the issue in Seattle is the team can be sold. As of May of this year, the team can be sold with none of the money going to the state of Washington. That was the threshold impediment. Any sale before May of 2024 meant 10% of the proceeds would go straight to the state of Washington as part of the stadium deal that was done 20 years ago. So there's a possibility that over the next few years, the team will be sold. One way to provide security for the coach who could find himself in the unenviable Ron Rivera position, which he was in twice, Carolina and Washington, is to give him the kind of contract that would provide him either ongoing employment or a big fat paycheck in lieu of ongoing employment in the event that Jody Allen decides to sell the team sooner than later. So that would be my answer to that. All right, let's see what else we got here. Sam Eichenlob, with the rules of new stadiums getting Super Bowls, any worry about Buffalo's new proposed stadium being outdoors? Would that cause the NFL to play a cold weather Super Bowl in Buffalo or not go to Buffalo at all because of it being outdoors? Look, the rule that teams that get new stadiums that are financed in whole or in part with public money is not on the books anywhere. It's just part of the loose quid pro quo, and it's hardly universal. Other than MetLife Stadium, which got the only open-air cold-weather Super Bowl, and the NFL dodged a bullet on both ends, mainly on the second end, because it snowed like crazy the next day. That's the only open-air cold-weather stadium that got a Super Bowl. Pittsburgh didn't. Cleveland didn't. Cincinnati didn't. Philadelphia didn't. So it only applies generally to open-air, to dome stadiums in cold weather cities, Minnesota, Detroit, Indianapolis. And the other reality too is, in Buffalo, even if it was a dome stadium, do you have the infrastructure there to host a Super Bowl? We talked about this last week on PFT Live. If and when Jacksonville gets the $1 billion in public money it's looking for a renovated stadium, it might get a Super Bowl again. The last time Jacksonville had a Super Bowl, they had to bring in cruise ships in order to have enough hotel space. Hotel space and big-ass convention center are two of the necessary prerequisites to hosting a Super Bowl. And look at what happened in Las Vegas last week. There were some 500,000 people in town, even though a lot of them obviously didn't go to the Super Bowl and only held 61,000 for the game. But a lot of people want to come to town for that game and be around all the excitement around it. And I think that's an impediment too, along with the fact that, it's cold and it's potentially going to snow 30 inches in the week of the game or on the day of the game, and nobody can get to the game. So I think that's pretty much a non-starter for Buffalo ever hosting a Super Bowl. GB Soccer 6, were you surprised by how many NFL players played in the NBA celebrity game? I think it was 3 or 4. Well, it was Micah Parsons, CJ Stroud, Puka Nacua. And look, remember when Patrick Mahomes was playing basketball a couple of years ago and the Chiefs caught wind of it and it was no more basketball for Patrick Mahomes? We've all played basketball recreationally and injured ourselves. Sprained ankle is the most common one. Randy Moss suffered a sprained ankle right before the draft in 1998, and that sprained ankle actually bothered him all of his rookie year, and he still was incredible. It doesn't take much. Look what happened to Dre Greenlaw. Now, he may have already had a pre-existing Achilles injury. To have it pop like that, you kind of wonder if it was feeling stiff. He was jumping up and down on the sideline like maybe this thing's a little stiff, and then pop, it goes. But injuries happen all the time. Serious injuries happen all the time when you're playing basketball. I am surprised the teams let the players do it. And for the players who do it, they need to understand they're taking a real risk. You could lose guaranteed money. You could derail your career. You might never get the contract you were looking for. Is it worth it? Each guy's got to make that decision. I just hope that that they made an informed, educated decision about what the potential consequence would be to their NFL career. Because if it's going to potentially screw up your NFL money, is it really worth it? That's only a decision each player can make. But if it were me, and if I was giving advice to somebody that was family member, friend, client, whatever, I'd say, I don't think it's worth it. Michael Cameron Vey, where does Brandon Aiyuk play next season? Where would he be a good fit as a receiver one? Look, he's going to want his contract. He's entering fifth-year option at $14.1 million. The 49ers, I think, would like to kick the can for a year. They want to get one more year of big cap numbers for guys like Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, maybe extend Christian McCaffrey and load up his cap number this year, because next year they got to deal with Brock Purdy wanting a new contract and deserving a new contract after getting peanuts as the last pick in the draft under that slotted rookie wage scale contract. So I think the 49ers would love to finesse this so Brandon Aiyuk waits a year. He was second-team All-Pro. He's eligible. He's due. He's earned it. He's going to jostle for it, I think. We'll see what the 49ers do. But if they want to play hardball, they hold his rights. And the 49ers like to play contractual hardball. They like to set the contracts up in a way that is very favorable to them. And, you know, if all else fails, you sit back, you fold your arms, and you say, hey, you're under contract. If you don't want to show up, that's your prerogative, but you're under contract, and you'll be fined. We'll fine you if you violate that contract and don't show up. Alex asks this question. Is the NFL ever going to take the officiating issues seriously enough to hire full-time accountable personnel? With the influx of gambling income, how can they not? Hey, preaching to the choir. I've been saying this for months. Look at the money that is coming in through the gambling sponsorships, and also look at the ability, and this is the soft underbelly of the NFL's gambling hypocrisy that no one, well, not many are talking about. Nobody's talking about it except for the people who are talking about it, but not many are talking about it. The fact that owners can hold equity interests in companies that operate sports books up to 5%. I made the example recently of DraftKings, $20 billion. If you own 5%, that's $1 billion. As of 2018, both Jerry Jones and Bob Kraft had a small amount less than 5%. The league allows you to own 5%. And as I understand it, you can own 5% of DraftKings, and you can own 5% FanDuel, and you can own 5% BetMGM. You can own 5% of the house collectively. So there's plenty of money out there to bankroll the changes needed to enhance public perception that the NFL is doing everything it can to ensure that the calls are being accurately made. That's why I've been pressing the NFL on the quote that Roger Goodell gave back in 2012. And I'm paraphrasing here. I don't have it in front of me, but in their opposition to gambling, he said, if legalized gambling is permitted on a widespread basis, normal incidents of the game, such as fumbles and bad calls and drop passes, will fuel speculation, distrust, or allegations of point shaving and game fixing. And I've pressed them to reconcile what Roger Goodell was sounding the alarm about and what they've seen. Have you seen this? I sure as hell have. I see it all the time. Games are fixed. Games are fixed. Games are fixed. That tinfoil hat theory has taken on credibility now that the NFL is fully in bed with gambling interests. And when you consider the fact that you've got owners who are allowed to own up to 5% of a sportsbook company, and they won't tell us who. They refuse to disclose the list of who owns what. Now, that may change. All it takes is one letter from Congress to say, we want to know this. The American people have the right to know. But there's a conflict there. There's hypocrisy there. There's inconsistency there. And it's not enough to just say when you're pressed as to what you're doing to prevent speculation, distrust, or allegations of game fixing by saying, well, we educate our personnel and we enforce our policies, and integrity of game is paramount to us. Okay, fine. But what are you doing to get people who suspect that the game is fixed to think that it's not? And one of the things that they can do is spend the money for full-time officials. And, you know, the pushback is, well, it's never going to be 100%. I don't care if it's 100%. You need to create the impression you're trying to make it 100%, right? Hey, I didn't study for the test and I got a 95. Well, Okay, get back to me when you study. I studied for the test and I got a 95. Well, at least you tried to get the highest possible score you could. At least the NFL would be trying to get the highest possible accuracy rate that it can. It's not just winging it. It's spending the money necessary to make all of us think that they're doing everything they can to get these calls right. I think about what Jerry Jones said during the season, that the two teams in any given game have kind of loosely agreed that however they call it is how they call it, even if the official is half blind, as Jerry Jones said. We both accept that that's how it goes. That's fine in a world where the NFL isn't fully in bed with gambling interests and the owners aren't owning 5% of the house. You don't want those bad calls to happen. You don't want to tolerate those bad calls. You want to make it look like you're trying to eliminate those bad calls because people are going to think that when the bad calls happen, something fishy has gone on. Speculation, distrust, and allegations of game fixing. That's what the NFL needs to fight against. And I don't think they're doing nearly enough to counter it. Word salads about integrity of the game and education of personnel is not going to change the growing perception that the fix is in, even though it's not. Now, I don't rule out the possibility of some rogue actors doing things they shouldn't do with inside information or a Tim Donaghy, but the league at large is not trying to fix games. Good luck convincing the American public at large of that reality. Manuel Villa, is Las Vegas in the rotation now of usual Super Bowl spots every couple of years? It seems to make too much sense with a centralized location where everyone can be and not have to have too much travel during game week. I loved Super Bowl in Las Vegas. I don't know what the rotation is. We talk about a rotation. Has a rotation developed? Las Vegas, Los Angeles, Miami, New Orleans? They're going like 12 years between Super Bowls. Arizona, Atlanta's trying to get a game again. Tampa Bay, there's a sense that the NFL owes Tampa another one because the last one ended up being the COVID one that wasn't a full Super Bowl experience. Santa Clara's getting another one in 2026. I don't know what the rotation is. Should it just be 3 or 4? And then you have to keep the door open for new stadiums domed in cold weather cities. At some point, they're going to replace Lucas Oil Stadium, and I guarantee you, Indy will get another Super Bowl when that happens. At some point, they'll replace Ford Field. Detroit will get another Super Bowl after that happens. Now, the Vikings Stadium, I remember when it opened, we went and toured it. They've got it set up, so it's going to be good for years and years and years. And it looks great. It doesn't seem like something's going to go out of date. But if they would ever have a new stadium in Minnesota, as long as it's domed, you're going to get a Super Bowl. So I don't know the rotation's ever going to happen. But I think that 2 places should definitely get a Super Bowl at least every 5 years. Las Vegas and Miami. Whatever you want to do beyond that, I'm fine with it. Las Vegas and Miami every 5 years. I don't know when the next one's going to be in Miami. They haven't awarded it, and it's already been 4 years. So good luck coming up with a rotation. But if it were up to me, Miami and Las Vegas, within every half decade, would have at least one Super Bowl. NFL leads, listening to you all Super Bowl week, chatting to stars and legends, then watching the game live. Do you ever imagine what young Florio would have thought if he could have seen into his future? I try to think about that from time to time, but I try not to think about it too much because I probably would freak out because, you know, when I discovered the NFL first on December 23, 1972 with the Immaculate Reception play, and then the next year when I kind of was all in NFL films, any show I could watch, Game of the Week, Football Follies, all the mythology that was created by the Sables about the NFL and watching the games that were available. The NFL Today, the first live pregame show, and you need to check out You Are Looking Live. Excellent documentary about that show that really was a turning point in the way that football games were presented, in the way that football games were discussed. But yeah, look, it's one of those things that it was so incomprehensible back in the 70s to understand how the future was going to unfold and the opportunities that were going to come available because of technology. the idea that you can be anywhere in the world and cover anything you want to cover. You don't have to move to this city or that city. You can be wherever you are. You can have a voice from wherever you are. You can create a platform from wherever you are. Again, I try not to think about it too much because, I mean, it's been a crazy 23 years. And we started this thing from absolutely nothing. And my approach has been, don't think about it too much, because if you do, it's all going to implode. My general approach has been, I'm going to ride this horse until it throws me off or it dies under me. And now that I'm getting closer to 59, I have to take into account the possibility of me dying in the saddle, which of the three is probably the most likely outcome at this point, but we'll see how it goes. I don't know if I need glasses or if I just need a bigger phone. Let's get this in the right spot. RB Roughnecks, how do you think head coaching hires' initial timeframes for job security have shifted? We just saw Frank Reich and Urban Meyer both get fired before the end of their first seasons, 2 in Josh McDaniels' case. Do you think the NFL owners have rushed the rebuild timeline? Look, I don't know why some of these owners make their decisions. I go back to the basic reality. We've got multi-billion-dollar businesses that are run like family-owned food trucks. So you've got people who make stupid decisions. Dysfunctional teams do dysfunctional things. And when you have, for example, David Tepper, when he's not throwing drinks on people, firing people. I'm sorry. It sounds mean, but he's the one that threw the drink on somebody. I mean, he had to at least consider somewhere in his brain, the moment he had the impulse to throw the drink, if I do this, number one, there's a good chance somebody's going to see it. Number two, there's a good chance somebody's going to record it. And number three, I'm never going to live it down. Anyway, David Tepper is just a guy who wants to win so badly. I want it now. I want it now. I want it now. I always get my way. I always win. I want this. He wants it maybe a little bit too much, and he goes crazy when he doesn't get what he wants. I watched the first episode of The Dynasty on Apple TV, and there was a little clip about Tom Brady and his roommate Brady's first year in the NFL playing Tecmo Bowl, and just how ridiculously competitive Brady was. He'd stomp his feet to reset the game when he was losing. There were dents in the wall from when he had chucked the controller into it. He just wanted to win, and he admits it. He wants to win at everything, and he gets pissed off if he doesn't. And it reminds me of something I've said in the past when we talk about ridiculously competitive pro athletes that have to win at everything. Not just the sport they play, but anything and everything else they do. I always have to win. Anything I do, I want to win, I want to win, I want to win. When we see those traits in like an 8-year-old kid, we try to say, hey, Timmy, you don't have to win at everything. Give the other kids a chance. Like, it's not an admirable quality in somebody who's growing up. But then when you've become a fully formed adult and you act like a spoiled brat, we're like, oh, what a competitor. Bravo, good sir. It's just weird. It's weird that we are in awe of somebody who acts like a spoiled little brat who never gets his way or always wants his way and will throw a drink on you if he doesn't get his way. All right. I don't know if I answered the question, but I had fun talking about it. Let's see what else we have. NFL leads. I know the overtime decision by Kyle Shanahan has been discussed endlessly, but it feels like the obvious disadvantage of going first is being overlooked. A defensive touchdown ends the game, and a turnover plus points does too. And Nick Bolton was inches away from that reality. And look, that's part of the analytics. And it happened to the Chiefs in overtime of the 2021 AFC Championship game. Patrick Mahomes threw an interception. It happened to the Saints in overtime of the 2018 NFC Championship game. Drew Brees threw an interception. You can have a turnover. You can convert it to sudden death like that. So I talk about the possibility of surprise onside kick. You take possession before the offense even gets possession and you convert it to sudden death. So that's part of the benefit of being on defense first. But it's part of what the San Francisco analytics department came up with in reaching their decision. They wanted the ball, and it's part of what the Chiefs came up with in reaching their decision. They wanted to kick. Let's see what else we have here. Manuel Villa, as a neutral outsider, have the Texans finally gone from dysfunctional franchise to a competent franchise, or does that take 2 to 3 years to fully come back from? Now, I think they're back. I think that between DeMeco Ryans and CJ Stroud, they're back. And they've got their quarterback, they've got their coach. The only concern is Bobby Slowick potentially becomes a hot commodity, the coaching carousel for next year, and they're going to have an offensive coordinator ready. They got lucky they didn't get a job this year. They have a year to plan for it. They better be ready to have a good offensive coordinator who can work with CJ Stroud. This is one of the detriments to hiring a defensive head coach. You get a good offensive coordinator. He's joined at the hip with your quarterback, and the offense does well. And then Brian Daboll goes to New York, and Ken Dorsey becomes the offensive coordinator, and things go the other way. And I mean, I'm sorry, Ken Dorsey, but we all know it happened. We all know it happened. We saw it. All right. And let's see what else we have. I should probably wrap this up. Tom Marshall, did Bill Belichick's checkered past with the Patriots play a part in him failing to get a job in this year's head coaching cycle? Look, I think it comes down to what Robert Kraft explained to reporters on the day that the mutual parting was announced. And remember, it was Belichick and Kraft at first issuing statements and no questions. Kraft came back later and answered questions, and he was asked whether or not Kraft considered the apparent willingness of Bill Belichick to give up some of his power and control. Kraft said that wouldn't be practical. It would be confusing. And think about it. You've got a guy who ran the entire operation for years. Now, all of a sudden, he's taking a backseat to somebody else on the draft and on the final 53-man roster and things that a general manager typically does and the coach doesn't, although plenty of coaches have that power. So it extends beyond New England, because extrapolate the reality of Belichick being the guy who was in charge of a football operation for years, going somewhere else. Even if he signs the paperwork that says I'm only the coach, it's still awkward for a general manager 30 years younger than Bill Belichick to exert authority over the team when you're tiptoeing on eggshells around the guy who had been in charge of a team for years. And hey, he agrees to it on the way in, and then he shows up to do the job. And all it takes is a little grunt. All it takes is a quizzical look on the face. All it takes is a comment here or there, and it makes it hard for everyone to know exactly what the lines are when you have a guy who is ostensibly only the coach, but we all know he has run an operation for a very long time. And it's going to be hard for him to break that habit, and it's going to be awkward for the people who have the powers in another organization that he used to yield with the Patriots or wield with the Patriots. It's going to be hard for that to be a seamless, smooth transition. I think that's why he doesn't have a job. And I think that's why he might not have a job next year. When he's a year older, and I wrote the thing over the weekend about the very real question of whether or not there's an age issue when it comes to NFL coaches. Pete Carroll didn't get a single interview in this cycle, and he doesn't come with that same baggage of Bill Belichick running the show, even though Carroll sort of did. It's not that same specter. And I think Carroll would be more likely and willing to take a step back and just coach the team, because I think he would have done it to stay in Seattle without question, and it probably would have worked. They were just ready to move on. But my point is, the same concerns are going to be there next year. So unless you have an owner who is willing to hand the keys to Bill Belichick and say, turn my team around, unless you have that, it's going to be hard for him to find a landing place in 2025. All right. I said I was only going to do a half hour. At least I told myself that. I don't think I said that here. Getting up on an hour, as I usually tend to do. Phil in Michigan, what are the cap casualties you're looking at this week? Well, I think it's premature to be thinking about cap casualties, and it's not just cap. It's not just the cap charge. It's the value. Do we want this guy at this number? We could deal with the cap charge. We just think dollar for dollar we could do better elsewhere. Look at the Broncos. Russell Wilson, house for sale, likely going to be cut. They may offer him some revised contract. He'll say pound salt. He's due to make $39 million fully guaranteed this year. They need to cut him by the 17th of March to avoid earning him $37 million fully guaranteed in 2025. He's going to be cut. And it's not really a cap casualty because it's going to be a significant cap charge to move on from it. It's about more dollars in, throwing good money after bad. There are going to be other players that fall into that category. What are the Seahawks going to do with Jamal Adams? So it's not just cap. It's the original analytics in football. How much does this guy cost me to keep as he's getting older? How much would it cost me to get somebody younger? Dollar for dollar, is it worth it? That's why I think Russell Wilson could be a hot commodity. If he's truly willing to take the veteran minimum and put the Broncos on the hook for the balance of the $39 million, 1 year veteran minimum deal, you get Russell Wilson at $1.2 million. The Steelers reportedly aren't going to consider any veterans that want to be starters. Okay, Russell Wilson, Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph. And I know Russell Wilson's kind of done this past couple of years. Russell Wilson, Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph. And you get Russell Wilson at $1.2 million? Are you kidding me? The Raiders, they could get Russell Wilson at $1.2 million? Are you kidding me? For a year, see what he does. If it works out, find a way to keep him around. I mean, he's going to be 36 in November. It's not like he's got 10 years left. I know he said he wants to play until he's 45, but let's just focus on getting to 40 first with a starting job. This is his chance to turn his career around. If he does it for $1.2 million, it's a hell of a bargain for whoever gets him. All right, what else do I have? I'm not sure I answered that question either, but I enjoyed the process. This is a hell of a question. I'm going to end on this. And if I didn't get to your question today, give it a try tomorrow. You have 5 minutes to hide a paperclip in your home. A detective has 24 hours to find it. If they don't find it, you get $100,000. Where are you hiding the paperclip? That's a hell of a question. And I don't know that I'm going to answer it. First of all, I want to think about it. And second of all, I ain't going to tell anybody out there where I'd keep my paperclip. That's for me to know and a detective to take 24 hours to find out. But on that note, think about that. Well, maybe we'll reconvene tomorrow or Wednesday and revisit the possibilities of where in your home you would, within 5 minutes, hide a paperclip, knowing that someone would have 24 hours to find it. You got about 24 hours to think about that, assuming I do an edition of PFT PM tomorrow. I have a feeling that I will. For now, I'll say thank you for some of your time. Have a great day, and check us out around the clock, as always, at ProFootballTalk.com. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.